On your Wednesday episode of Locked On Raptors, play in for what? Well, we'll tell you what. In a crossover episode with Tony East of Locked On Pacers, the Raptors' opponent tonight is, of course, the Indiana Pacers, who are in the play-in mix with the Toronto Raptors. We'll dig into why the play-in is a thing to strive for and get a status update on both teams ahead of tonight's big game to kick off a 4-game Raptors homestand. That's all coming up on today's episode. Thanks for hanging.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on? Welcome to episode number 1365 of Locked On Raptors for Wednesday, March the 22nd. I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 9 seasons on various platforms. You can find all of my work over on Twitter at WoodleySean. You can also follow, subscribe to, rate, review the podcast for free wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you subscribe either on the YouTube channel or on your favorite audio apps to make sure you never miss an episode. Get those notifications when we have live episodes, all that good stuff. It's always much appreciated when you go ahead and do that to support the show. Today's show, we are going to dig into the Raptors-Pacers matchup tonight, more specifically just kind of getting a status update on both teams, where the Pacers at, what's their level of desire to even make the play-in as they sit on the outside looking in right now, although have picked up some decent wins of late and of course have been very good when Tyrese Haliburton's been available. It's unclear whether he's going to play tonight. That obviously changes things and makes it even more of a must-win for the Raptors. Not that it wasn't already. This homestand, it really feels like, please, take care of business. Go get yourself at least 3 wins out of 4. Sweeping all 4 against the Pacers, Pistons, Wizards, and Heat would be lovely. Truly a delight for a team that simply can't seem to get over 500. Maybe it's a bit of a pipe dream. But either way, we're going to tee it up now. We're going to first talk about the play-in race and what the stakes are really for both the Raptors and Pacers coming into tonight, and the overall arguments in favor or against making the play-in as a whole. And we will do it with, of course, our pal Tony East of Locked On Pacers. He's the best. Let's get to it now. The chat with Tony East about the play-in, about the Raptors, about the Pacers, and so much more. Let's get to it.
Locked On crossover time. Locked On Pacers, Locked On Raptors. One of my favorite people to talk to. It's the host of Locked On Raptors, Sean Woodley. I'm Tony East, one of the hosts of Locked On Pacers. And for different reasons, Sean, I don't think either of us thought we'd be talking about play-in tournament on March 21st. I think the Raptors thought they'd be better than that, including me. I thought the Raptors would be better than that. I don't think anybody thought the Pacers would be good enough to be in this mix, also including me. But here we are. Devastating Monday night for the Pacers play-in chances, although many fans, I think, have had that ship sail on their heads. Raptors still trudging along in ninth. Before we talk about these two teams in tonight's game, I want to talk about the play-in tournament, the value it has to teams, especially teams with different expectations entering the season, and all sorts of fun things about competitive basketball. Sean, first of all, how are things in Canada?
Oh, wonderful. The snow is melting. It's like 10 degrees Celsius today. It's beautiful. Having a great time. I feel like I'm finally emerging from hibernating all winter, doing nothing, eating nonstop, and just building my stores of fat, which I think is not how it works with actual bears. But now I feel like I'm shaking off the rust and remembering how to be a bear again. It's nice.
That's the life. That is truly the life. The play-in is a tournament that exists. And I was just talking to a couple Pacers players and a Mad Ants player, Elfrid Payton, who has played in the playoffs before, about the value of the postseason for a younger team. And some of this doesn't apply to the Raptors because OG's a champ. Jakob's played in the playoffs before. A lot of the Raptors, they've all played in the playoffs last year, for Pete's sake. But even still, for young players, I was talking to Aaron Nesmith. He was on the Celtics for their finals run last year. Miles Turner about this, and they were all like, the thing about the play-in or any playoff game is like it just teaches you the value of the importance of individual possessions, and like it'd be so huge for us to be there even if we can't make it through. And I don't know if their tenor has changed because that was 5 days ago now, and they've lost 2 games since. But from a competitive basketball perspective, and from what it means for the direction of your franchise, what do you think about what it means for both the Raptors or Pacers or any team to be in it, even if it might not mean anything if you lose in the first game?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've all kind of agreed that the play-in is basically just like an elaborate way to decide who gets munched by the top two seeds in each conference every year. And I think that's fine, right? Like, the NBA is a league where stratification rules, right? There are 2 to 5 teams that have a chance at winning a championship every single season. Maybe you could argue there's like 8 this year, although I'd actually argue I think there is 1, and it's the Milwaukee Bucks, and no other teams are serious. But either way, like, you can't have every season be about the end game of did we win a championship or not, because then there's just no joy whatsoever. And I think like the player experience angle, the sheer fun of a single elimination basketball game, and the fact that you can kind of have some sort of crowning purpose for your season, something to hang your hat on. You win the play-in, you do what Patrick Beverley did last year with the Wolves. No one's ever going to forget that. Like, I think there are lots of reasons to want to be in the play-in. Yeah, it's probably miserable as like a fan watching your team in real time in that single elimination game, but that's what we do this for. We don't watch sports so we can just like, look at the stat sheet and look at the contenders and be like, well, they didn't win the championship, and the season happened and nothing of note took place. That sucks. You want to have some sort of way to cap the season, and even if it's just losing in a one-off elimination game, I think there's value to it. Not to mention all of the tangible stuff that you just said, the sort of realizing of, oh, this is a different game, and each possession is extremely important, and you get to test guys against playoff level defenses where teams are fully scheming to stop you, and not you and also the guy they're playing the next night who plays a similar position but is a totally different player. It's all of it is good. I don't understand the sort of backlash to any fan who's just like, why would they go for the play when they can go tank and get the 9th best lottery odds? Like, I'm sorry. I just think like the 4% chance at getting a top pick in the NBA draft is not worth the giving up of all the good tangible stuff that can come from the play-in. And I think you could make arguments for both the Raptors and the Pacers, who are in very different positions, that it's better for them to be in it, to get that experience, to play those games, than to not.
I think there's a lot more at stake for the Raptors. Like, I'm more receptive to if the Pacers have a terrible last 10 games, like, okay, you know what? Mm-hmm. Like, they showed what they can, like, they still have a winning record when Haliburton plays this year, right? The blueprint for them being awesome is like, this is easy. He plays like, just add stuff around that. So like them not going for it would make sense. Like, I think both sides make sense because of, like I said, with Nesmith and Turner and all these guys, like there are the tangible benefits, and I think they want it. They've said they want it, but at the same time, like, I'm not dumb. Like, I understand that the 6th pick is better than the 10th pick or whatever it would shake out to be.
Is it though? Like, if we did like a historical evaluation of the difference between the 7th pick and the 12th pick, I feel like it's a crapshoot at that point. Like, what are we really doing here?
I use 6 and 10 just because someone replied to me on Twitter yesterday. Like, every Pacers fan, I think, is done with the play-in chase. But someone was replying to someone else. They were arguing about making the plan, and they said last year's draft, the difference between 6 and 10 is Ben Mathurin and Johnny Davis. And I just went, oh man,
you can't take what the Wizards do in the draft to mean anything. Come on now, like, what are we doing?
yeah. I get what you're saying though. Like, the draft is never a sure thing and things like that. And
Jalen Williams went 12th. That dude rocks. Like,
he's gonna get second.
It's all situation.
Yeah. So I agree with you for sure on that. The Pacers specifically, it's a little different than the Raptors, where it's like, hey, our KPIs this season were like, let's be in the playoffs, and it's maybe not a sure thing yet.
Yeah, I mean, with the Raptors, it is interesting because obviously they want to make it. They make the Jakob Poeltl trade, presumably with the intent of building towards a play-in push. At the time, it seemed like even the 6th seed was possible, with the Nets potentially going to tumble. They've won a little bit more than I think anyone expected, so the 6th seed's off. But I do think, even if the Raptors don't make the play-in, which I think is unlikely, but even if they make it and lose in the 9-10 game, I still don't know if, like, I would say the stakes are as important for them, like, in the actual play-in game as they are kind of in this stretch for the rest of the regular season. Because really for the Raptors, it's about, hey, is this a group we can kind of go play ball with next year, right? And like, I think they've honestly kind of answered that question in a lot of ways. Like, yes, maybe declaratively, yes, just with the way Jakob Poeltl has made the team make a whole lot more sense. I think if you just had Jakob Poeltl on this team from the start of the year, they're probably in like the 4-5 conversation in the Eastern Conference based on how they've played, based on how their defense has performed, and based on how the process of their offense has looked a lot better. The results haven't quite come along. But, I do think ultimately, just as like a Raptors fan, I've kind of accepted whatever their ultimate fate is. I'm like, yeah, it's fine. I'm more sort of invested in the 26 games that they get with Jakob Poeltl, of which there are like 10 left, and how those go and how those dictate the future. And I honestly think early returns suggest that that's already kind of been declared a success. And now if they go and win a play-in game and get into a first-round series and spook the Celtics or the Sixers or the Bucks for a game or two, I think that's kind of all gravy at this point. But yeah, it's there's obviously different motivations, and ultimately I don't think the play-in is changing anyone's lives one way or another results-wise. I think you'd be a pretty silly front office to make your decisions based off of one or two games, but the sort of lead up to it, I think, is where I'm finding the most fascination.
Yeah, the interesting decision-making part that you just said is like, pretend either of these two teams make the playoffs. It's like all of a sudden, if you're Masai Ujiri, for example, it's like you can evaluate what fits in a playoff setting with Pascal, Scotty, Jakob, Fred. Like what was good, what was bad. Like how does that change your approach, if at all, of the offseason? Because it is a different game, right? That's what Neesmith said. He's like, look, we made the finals. Like you learn a lot about the value of every possession. I already said this stuff, but like same for the Pacers who have never been there. Sure, again, I get how for them the high draft pick might be a little more valuable at this stage of their rebuild, but also it's like you have no idea what any of these guys look like in the playoffs. Haliburton, Hield, never played a playoff game, either of them. A lot of them haven't, right? Like you learn a lot about what you might need at that part of a build, whereas right now you have not a clue, not a clue in sight. But they are obviously, again, in a different spot than the Raptors. Specifically, I just wanted to kind of compartmentalize the plan because there's only 10 games left. It's weird to think that like you have one bad or good week and your season completely changes. The tenor is totally different.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the Raptors right now, I'm sitting all fat and sassy here. Oh, they're 9-7 since Yak came around, 9-6 with him as a starter. The defense is looking good. OG Anunoby's playing his best ball. Fred VanVleet looks back. They could lose 2 of the next 4 games, 3 of the next 4 that they have in this homestand against the Pacers, the Pistons, the Wizards, and the Heat. And I could be singing an entirely different tune and calling for heads and saying it's a big failure. That's what we're allowed to do as feeble sports fans, I would say, is change our minds whenever we want. But as it stands, I think the last little stretch here, the race for the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference, I think is particularly interesting just because it's such an advantage over having to play the 2 games as a road team. And between the Raptors, Bulls, and Hawks, all their kind of butt, and who is least butt is going to get that 9th seed. And I think that's a fascinating kind of way to spice up the end of the season. That's the other thing the play-in's done, right? Is like, I care more about March basketball than I ever used to. And I think that has to be declared some kind of success in favor of the play-in as a concept.
Pacers tried and failed to do the 2 play-in rounds thing the first year of it. I think only that Memphis team is still the only team from the 9-10 bracket that's ever made it through. Like, it's very hard to win twice from that lower group. That said, though, if you don't want to be in that lower group, this game tonight, Raptors Pacers, pretty important. Important. Let's talk about it. Both perspectives here, Raptors and Pacers. 2 teams that look different from the last times they've played. Haliburton's out. Jakob Poeltl's on the Raptors, like we've said. We'll get to all that in just a second. But before we do that, I got to talk to you guys about Ultimate Pro Basketball GM. Geeked out by our new partner and sponsor of this episode, the mobile game Ultimate Pro Basketball GM. Ever dreamed of becoming an actual NBA GM, managing your basketball franchise? Your dream can come true. And this game is definitely for you. Manage every strategic aspect of your team. Play through the season and lead your team to glory. You're responsible for hiring the right coaches, trading and training your players, navigating your franchise through free agency, the draft, making the picks, all the ups and downs of a season, all in this challenging and realistic game where, let me tell you, it is hard. Ultimate Pro Basketball Gym, completely free and playable offline, play on the go, and when and where you want. Our Locked On NBA host chat is buzzing with trash talk. Pat, the designer, running away with our titles. Locked On Pacers and Raptors listeners can get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code LOCKEDON in the game store. So make sure to check it out. To download the game, just visit probasketballgm.com, scan the code, or look it up on the App Store. That's probasketballgm.com. Ultimate Basketball GM. Start your dynasty today. Thank you, everybody, for making either Locked On Pacers or Locked On Raptors your first listen today and every single day. Kyrie Irving's in a walking boot, Sean. I think Locked On Mavs should be your second listen. Get the latest from Dallas, who scored 12 points in the fourth quarter in a loss to the Grizzlies, another show you should listen to because John Morant might play tonight, and there's a lot going on in the NBA, so I could probably talk about 20 other teams you should make your second listen. Sean, should we do Raptors first or Pacers first? What do you think?
Let's grill away on the fighting Toronto Raptors.
Well, the big picture, right? Everybody was surprised at their trade deadline direction, trading stuff away, trading stuff in, picks away. That's what I meant to say in my head. Trading away vets, like many surmised could happen. Why did that happen? What led into that for the Raptors? And how much has Jakob Poeltl? Turns out having centers is important. How much has that helped to this Toronto team?
Yeah, to answer your second question first, Jakob Poeltl is a godsend. He's incredible. The Raptors are 17.2 points per 100 possessions better on defense with him on the floor versus when he's off. He's insane. He's everything they needed. He ties it all together in a nice little bow.
I have to stop you for 1 second. You tried to fake trade me for Miles Turner so many times.
I did.
Exactly why.
I honestly, man, it was the 100 years of basketball history telling us that big men are useful. Apparently, it's ringing true once again. And yeah, I think as far as why the Raptors did what they did, I think it was a bit of an admission on the part of the front office to say, hey, we didn't really give this team all the ingredients it needed. We had this idea where, what if we built the whole plane out of 6'8" guys? And that's just it. And there are elements of it that are nice and interesting. And, certainly they're long. They're very nasty to play against defensively when they really get into their sort of vision 6'9" peak. But it's not a sustainable way to play 82 games, 48 minutes. It's probably reserved for specific spots within games to go all wing. And you just got to have dudes with center skills. You got to have guys who can set screens and pick and roll and, offensive rebound, protect the rim. These are types of basic fundamental skills the Raptors just didn't have any of outside of Christian Koloko, a second-round rookie who is very green and also I think is sixth in the league in terms of on-off defensive difference, just because when the Raptors have a center, they're good. And I think his play kind of spoke to the fact that they needed someone a little bit more serious at that position over the course of the long haul. And yeah, I think the front office realized, hey, we didn't do a good enough job putting this roster in a position to succeed. We're going to try to do that now, and we're not under crazy duress to go and make all of these grand sweeping decisions about our core right now at the deadline. We can almost use this as the start of our offseason, but we can wait until the offseason to make our final decisions on a guy like Fred VanVleet or Gary Trent Jr., both of whom are unrestricted free agents, which complicates all of this, of course. Yak also being a UFA complicates it too, and that, I think, and that was my big sort of critique with it all, is they're putting themselves into a bit of a corner here where they're going to have to keep those three guys or find a way to keep at least two of them while signing and trading one of them. Because when you look back at recent Raptors history, they've lost a lot of guys for no return in free agency. Pretty explainable in most cases, honestly. Like Kawhi Leonard, you weren't going to trade him at the deadline. He just left. You won a title, you deal with it, fine. But still, there's been undeniable talent drain, not to mention they've had to trade out first-round picks and stuff like that. This is a long way of saying the free agency situation this offseason, there's a lot hanging on it. They got to bring these guys back. They have to find a way to thread the needle if they can. I think they've done a pretty good job of setting themselves up to get into next season and kind of hit the ground running. But you also had other sort of bigger picture questions out there too, right? OG Anunoby, are they going to trade him? He was the apple of seemingly every team's eye in the entire league. And Yeah, and it seemed like no one really wanted to pony up like real first-round picks to do it, or didn't pony up enough, and the Raptors are under no pressure to trade him. He's under contract. He's very good. They could probably flip him at the draft to some team that's just been beaten in the playoffs that could use a wing defender and get a similar return. And so I think they just decided we didn't give ourselves enough proper information to go off of here because we didn't assemble the roster you want. You can critique the front office all you want for not building a roster with a real center coming into the season, and I think that's fair. I also think you have to credit them for realizing their mistake, making the trade they did with Jakob Poeltl, and not blowing the whole thing up before actually realizing if it was worth being blown up. And so, yeah, it's a complicated one for sure. The people who love draft picks hated the Raptors' moves at the deadline, but ultimately it was a first-round pick for next season, and with the way the Raptors have played with Jakob Poeltl, that's not going to be a very good pick. It's top 5 protected. I'm sure there'll be a playoff team next season or something very close to it. It's not going to be a massive loss in the whole. And Jakob Poeltl at this point, dude, you could have traded 4 first-round picks for him, and I wouldn't have cared because he looks awesome. He just has tied everything together for this team very, very neatly, and it's been a joy to watch.
Yeah, it's when I watched the Pacers play the Raptors, I was like, man, like you can do this Project 6'8", 6'9" thing, but like you have to have good point guard play and a center. And Fred has been much better of late.
Oh yeah.
And Poeltl, pride of Rockford, like I always say, second most famous person from Rockford, me being the first. And Yak's been good for them. So there you go. That helps. And the Pacers are the inverse team where they have the point guard and they have the center and they have none of the wings. And that's why Jordan Nwora and Oshae Brissett lineups do well, because they are 6'8" and can fill in a gap that is typically reserved for a smaller player or another center. So, it's been, it was interesting to me to see the Raptors go that way, but also a litmus test for the team they're playing tonight. Yeah, that is the other part of this. Like, what did you say? They're 9-7 since the deadline. I think they're 6-4 in their last 10. What have they done well and poorly? And can the Pacers exploit any of those weaknesses in this game? Because Pacers have at Toronto, at Boston, at Atlanta in the next 4 days. Those 3 road games. Tough travel, tough opponents. They lose all 3. Season's on life support, but they've beaten the Raptors twice. That's maybe their best chance, only because the Atlanta game's a back-to-back. Can the Pacers do this, or is it just not a chance right now?
I think it's a tough matchup now, just because the Raptors make a lot more sense, kind of on both ends. It should be noted, we're not sure if Scotty Barnes is going to play. He's got a wrist injury. He had negative x-rays, but as of recording on Tuesday, he seems like he's going to be questionable. We'll see. I would expect he might sit that one out, but, TBD. Even then, though, like the team they just make a lot more sense. There's a lot more flow to the offense. The offense hasn't quite found the results. I think they're like 19th since the trade, but the flow and the quality of shots they're getting is there. OG Anunoby's playing out of his mind right now. I don't think he's missed a 3 in like a week and a half. It's been awesome. He's also defending everyone from Bradley Beal to Nikola Jokic to Anthony Davis to you name it. He'll probably guard Haliburton some tonight. He'll probably guard Miles Turner some tonight. That's just kind of what he does. If Haliburton plays. But yeah, I think just the quality of what they're doing, like their offense, it used to just be kind of like, well, we'll stand around and try to hunt a mismatch for 24 seconds. And most of the time that was not bearing a whole lot of fruit. Now it's like, oh, we can run a pick and roll? What? So they'll bring Jakob Poeltl up, set a screen, and everything flows from there. They can run Yak from the elbows. They can run, all sorts of off-ball stuff for Fred and Gary Trent Jr. and OG. Pascal Siakam is starting to find his groove again after a bit of a fallow period after the trade, kind of dealing with the new space that he's trying to negotiate or lack thereof, just because the front court is essentially 3 non-shooters or 3 non-classical shooters in Siakam, Scotty Barnes, and Jakob Poeltl. And so, yeah, it's been tricky to kind of figure out on the edges of like, all right, where's everybody getting their looks from? But for the most part, they're layering and stuff around that Yak Fred pick and roll that all complements one another. OG's been playing out of his mind off the ball as well. He's catching at least 1 or 2 lobs from Yak at the elbow every single game. You'll probably see that in this game tonight because it just seems like a thing that can't be stopped. And I would expect that, coupled with their much improved defense with Yak as the rim protector who was promised and OG being freed up to know that there's insurance behind him as their lead wing defender. He can be more aggressive, and when he's aggressive, it's a nightmare for the other team. You have Fred VanVleet, obviously. He's been having a pretty rough defensive season too, but he's been much better since Yak arrived, having that insulation behind him. It's just a more complete and sensible basketball team, and in particular against a team that doesn't have a ton of good wing defense. Like you mentioned, the Oshae Brissett's, Jordan Nwora's of the world getting the run for the Pacers. I think they're probably going to struggle to contain what the Raptors do well. And so I would expect the Raptors, of course, they've won 7 in a row at home as well. I'd expect the Raptors stand a pretty good shot of flummoxing the Pacers in a game on Wednesday night. Should we continue? Get on the other side. We'll dig into the Pacers of it all. We'll talk about, what to expect. Will the Pacers go all out for the 10th seed? All of that, we'll get there in just one sec. Before we do that, Tony, we should tell the good people out there about our friends over at FanDuel. The NCAA tournament, both men's and women's, is heating up, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scorers and three-pointers drained. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. I don't know about you, Tony, but when I do dabble in sports wagering, which is very rarely, it's usually when I'm at a game in person and I want to juice up that live experience. The same game parlay is a great way to do that. Just pick 3 bets or however many you want, but 3 is usually the way I go within the game, and you can get them all together on that same game parlay and win bigger. That's fun. So don't miss the chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Tony, let's turn this around. How the turntables, and get into the Pacers, who, like you said, they kind of fallen off a little bit here. They may or may not have interest in winning these games. We might not see Tyrese Haliburton play on Wednesday. I would guess probably not, based on their perhaps lack of desire to win these games. What is going well? What is like this for a Raptors fan tuning in, is just like, I want to be entertained by some Pacers basketball right now. If there's no Haliburton, which is usually thing number one that's going to get me enticed by a Pacers game, what is it right now that's happening? Is there something interesting tactically that's going on with the team? Is there some player who's kind of having a moment? What for you is the thing to watch for a Raptors fan with wandering eyes wanted to check out what's going on the Pacers side of things?
Yeah, typically it's Haliburton, right? One of the best.
God, he's so good.
8 guards, 7 guard, whatever guards in the NBA, close to all NBA level. Probably not going to make it because of games. In the league, he's awesome. He can shoot, he can pass, he can do everything. And the Pacers would be in, I believe, 7th in the East if his winning percentage carried over to 72 games. That's not reasonable to think, but like, just to put in perspective how good he's been and important to this team. He got hurt in practice a week ago Wednesday. And they said the next day that he was guaranteed to miss their next 3 games. And they've played those 3 games. So I guess he could play. I really doubt it, though. I kind of doubt that an ankle injury would take 7 days and you're good to go. Maybe, but we'll see.
Especially when you have the extra pain that seeps into your bones in March, especially when you're a team that's below 500.
Yeah,
we call that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander-itis.
Yes, we had the same player in mind. That's cool. So
that doesn't speak well of the Thunder, by the way, that we came to the same guy that quickly. It's just not good, Sam Presti.
Outside of him, they have been exploring a little who can create on their team. Andrew Nembhard had some really good games last week, a stinker on Monday. Jordan Nwora has been putting it on the floor a little bit more. Same with Aaron Nesmith. So you'll get to see some exploring. And also TJ McConnell doing TJ McConnell things, which has been good for their second unit. He just spearheaded a sweet bench game as they beat the Bucks, which was huge for a couple of these teams last week. It was their first win over Giannis in like 5 years. It was crazy. So they have like fun, interesting guys who are developing a little bit. Miles Turner's been really good in the year 2023. He just scored 15 points in a quarter on Monday, and he's done well against the Raptors this season. Part of the reason the Pacers have swept them so far this year, which is so unlike the history of Pacers Raptors, by the way. So they have players who in their role have been doing well. And like, if you go for a span of 8 games, like let's say 5 of them or 6 of them will be good, but 2 of them will not be good. And the problem is without Haliburton, it's very hard to have those be overlapping games for a lot of guys. So I predict you'll see someone young or interesting, or Buddy Hield, who is, I guess Buddy Hield's very interesting, but have a good game. Probably 2 or 3 guys, but there'll also be some guys who you just, head scratch plays and can't figure out what the Raptors are doing, and they're a young and consistent player making young and consistent plays, and that'll hurt the Pacers. There'll be one or 2 guys that you go, oh, I didn't know he was doing that, and there'll be some other guys, like Rod Boone covers the Hornets, and he tweeted during Pacers Hornets, like, this is a play-in team, this Pacers team, like, that is what they have been doing recently. So it'll be fascinating to see who those guys are. If they all gel like they did last Thursday, they beat the Bucks on the road. Like, they are still, they can do it without Haliburton. They just usually don't. So if he plays, obviously he's the guy. If not, they're going to need everybody to gel, which has been kind of rare for them.
Whole lot of CanCon on this Pacers team. We love the CanCon. You got Andrew Nembhard. You got Bennedict Mathurin. You got Oshae Brissett. Chris Duarte, I think we tried to claim, but I think he has put up the flag for the Dominican. We love to try to claim players as Canadian, though. It's like our favorite thing in the world. Among those guys, obviously Mathurin has been the most eye-popping this year. Nembhard, I think... Let me ask you this. Who's more likely to make an all-rookie team? Mathurin or Nembhard? Obviously, the scoring numbers slide Mathurin's way, but like Nembhard has started 53 games. He's had some like high-profile defensive moments. He's had some big buzzer beaters. Like, I know it's not like a sexy 8.6 3 and 4 line or anything like that, but... I guess maybe it's not like a either or thing. Just gloat about both of those fun Canadian rooks.
Nembhard can like move his arms on defense for 48 minutes, and like no one in the NBA can do that. It's such a randomly unique skill. Like you can keep low, get him, whatever. He's good at a lot of little stuff. His passing and traffic's awesome. He is kind of the epitome of the guy I just described. That's like 5 good games out of 8, but the 3 bad ones for him are just like extra bad, whereas some guys might just be, I don't want to dump on him. He's played out of position all season. Like he just now is getting thrust into point guard. He's had a really good year. Mathurin's more likely to make all rookie. One, because of how voting has worked for all of time. Like
we love points, baby. Give me them points.
That's part of it. But also it's like, every voter, like, I don't know if this is maybe too pessimistic. What do they watch? 15 full games for every team throughout the season. If they're,
that feels like
a little high, you think?
Probably a little high, I guess. I don't know, man.
That's some. What I always estimate in my head for every team, but I think that might be a little high.
I think there's like Houston Rockets broadcasters. I don't know why it's always the Rockets. I guess I'm just thinking back to like Harden MVP years, but there's always like a Houston Rockets broadcaster who has watched like 9 non-Rockets games all season long who gets a vote. Those are the people that probably, like you're saying, are looking at the first 2 weeks of Mathurin going off and being like, he's all rookie. Already finished that work in November. Done.
I still think he'll finish top 4 for rookie of the year and be first team. Like, yeah, the scoring's fallen off, but that's part of it is being a rookie. Part of it's like teams are like, oh, we've got to guard this guy. Like, we have to like send coverage at this kid, and he's adjusted to that. Like, he's gotten a little bit better at swinging it and being a part of the second unit. Carlisle's credit, his passing isn't like setting up teammate buckets yet, but it's better.
I do fear that he's going to get the OG treatment in this game, and that won't be fun.
Yeah, we'll see what ends up going on there. They're both good. Nembhard's played for Team Canada before, right? And I think Joe Varden reported that Mathurin would like to this summer. Yeah. I think that Nick Nurse already has his 14 guys picked, but if someone's hurt or can't do it or something, maybe Mathurin can get that shot for FIBA play, which would be cool. I mean, he's certainly very good. So, yeah, we'll see those 2 Canadian team mainstays potentially in a couple years, and certainly Pacers mainstays. I think that they're trying to figure out what Nembhard is and what he can be like when this team's good, and that's why maybe an important game would be helpful. But yeah, they've both been good. It'll be fun to see them back up in the 6, as they say.
Yeah. So I want to ask you. We'll finish off with the topic everybody wants, which is Oshae Brissett. And the reason I ask you this is because Raptors fans, Tony, all season long, it's been a little quieter since Jakob Poeltl arrived, but Start of the season, super thin team, not a ton of bench production. You got Yuta Watanabe going off with the Nets, haven't been on the team the last couple seasons. And Oshae Brissett kept on getting brought up as this like lost gem of the Raptors development model, a signal that the model that has brought them so much goodness over the last decade or so is finally starting to show cracks. How on earth did they let Oshae Brissett out of their grasp? Can you calm Raptors fans down a little bit? Or maybe you have glowing Oshae Brissett praise to make them feel even worse about all of this. But I kind of feel like it might be the former.
Every team gets one guy like that, right? Like total fringe rotation guy that you're just convinced like, oh, he would have been so. A lot of Pacers fans loved like Alize Johnson for forever. Did he get a
another Raptors 905 classic? Maybe.
Yeah. He was really popular as a fringe dude. He was a really good rebounder. Brissett's like good. He is like, no matter who gets hurt, no matter what position they play, because they have a lot of guys who can play multiple positions, Brissett's the first guy who gets that spot in the rotation. So he's been playing a lot more recently because they've been dealing with injuries. He's still valuable, right? Just when you're that size and you don't suck at anything, like you are a helpful player, right? Like he's a low mistakes guy. He's not the best shooter, finisher at the rim, certainly, but if you're a low mistakes dude who's 6'8" and can kind of dribble and kind of shoot, and you're average at worst on defense, like that's valuable, right? Like that's a valuable player type. He'll be in the league for I'd say 5 more years at least, just because again, like low error players are valuable, but at the same time, not like this big lineup raiser unless he's hot, because at the same time, he's not like amazing at anything either, right? Kind of that in between kind of guy where I get where if you're a team that's like, ugh, we keep losing because we do stupid stuff like turn it over or lose a guy on 5 back cuts in a row. It's like, man, if we had this mistake-free guy, we'd be great. But it's like, well, I don't know. You need like a really good creator with him or other stuff. Like he's good. He'd help the Raptors, but there is a limit of what he can provide.
Any parting shots here, Tony, before we send everybody off into Raptors Pacers this evening? Any last things you're looking for? Anything that's got your interest piqued?
Not really. I love watching OG just because we overlapped at school, and some people reported the Pacers had interest. So, of course, that'll be interesting to watch. But if Haliburton
the way
plays,
he has played, I thought at the deadline, I was like, I think you got to trade OG because all you could get back. Think of the picks. I became the thing I hate. But
draft stuff.
He's been insane since Jakob Poeltl's arrival, and I think the chances he gets traded are going down real quick. So I'm sorry for you, Tony, in particular, that he's not going to be a Pacer anytime soon. I'm very sorry for you and no one else.
I literally cannot think of a better fit for what the Pacers need than OG.
You did mention they could use a wing who can do some stuff at 6'8". He's very much that. He's one of many the Raptors have in that department. Again, no Scotty Barnes potentially, so one fewer guy in that department. But OG rocks. I'm excited to watch him tonight. Shall we wrap here, buddy?
Yes, Sean is on Twitter at Woodley Sean. I'm on Twitter at TEastNBA. Neither of us tweet as much as we used to, but do with that information what you will.
Why would you?
I just tried to turn off 2-factor login with my phone today, so I don't get my account removed. It's all so stupid.
It's very good. It's working very well. I'm glad I've hitched my wagon to this sinking ship. It's awesome.
We'll be breaking down this game and the important stories and takeaways on our respective shows tomorrow. So you will not want to miss that. If you're a Raptors listener or Pacers listener, thank you so much for making it this far. We will see you tomorrow.